started recording?
Yeah, I'm just going to get you on my headphones here.
Our show will go live in 5 seconds. 4.
3, 2, 1. I just lost sound.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom. I'll keep my guns. Try to keep my money and my religion too. Now keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going to play that? Stop it!
This morning, go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath. To defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I never thought there would be an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my good BA, keep my friends clean, keep the government out of my business, and keep the
He is the free American, Plain Douglas.
We know
It's the Free American Hour. Weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Tell her to put some water out for the dog.
Country stands in the path of danger. Summon her finest first. Those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the sirens sound first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard, who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight that symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty. television, radio, and business. The sun is rising across this great United States, and that means straight from the heart of Texas. It is time for Clayton Douglas, the Free American. Take it away, Clayton.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. And today, I want to talk about the Boston Massacre 2013, inevitable blowback, or BB's gift to an insolent America, or both. Now, let me see here. Got a couple more things to do here. And, all right, it's all working. All right. One of the things that I've come up with some information here that we've killed since 9/11. We've killed over 1 million Americans. I mean, a million people all over. Americans have killed over 1 million people. Muslims and the works. Can we stop them from barking? Anyway, all right. The world of post-destruction, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Gaza, and Lebanon, it's more than a little believable that someone from one of those aforementioned neighborhoods might harbor enough of a grudge to strike back at what's commonly referred to as an act of terrorism. Now, just before the show, I listened to probably a dozen soldiers talking about what had happened, what was going on with what they had done in Iraq, how they had killed families, how they had killed people. And this is why a lot of American soldiers have committed suicide. Now, lest we forget, this is precisely what nearly 300 million Americans sanctimoniously did in the aftermath of 9/11, after 30,000 of their own lost their lives, having little or no understanding of the laws governing cause and effect. Uncle Sam's temperamental and trigger-happy offspring handled it the only way that's ever made sense to them: invade a series of countries, drop millions of pounds of ordnance on heavily populated cities, destroy infrastructure, murder millions of people, cause incalculable suffering, and not feel an ounce of remorse or regret over it. So it's entirely believable, even expectable, that a few individuals, after seeing what's happened to their own extended family members, and under the influence of raw, powerful emotions such as grief, rage, and everything in between, might just decide to pull an Uncle Sam themselves and do to America what America has done to the world over, kill innocent people in an otherwise festive event such as the Boston Marathon. It's a simple two-syllable words that Ron Paul tried to tell you about. It's known as blowback, and it's as inescapable as the laws. Why am I getting this? I'm getting a little bit of a feedback here. Is it sounding okay, Richard? Okay, great. Not sure where it's coming from there, but anyway, it's blowback. It's as inescapable as the laws of gravity, inertia, action, reaction, or if you want to get biblical about it, those dying by the sword who live by it. The ugly truth be told, the only difference between the two scenarios, Americans killing innocent Muslims or Muslims killing innocent Americans, lie in the manner by which it is Hollywoodized by Jewish interests out to steer American opinion in a direction favorable to Israel. When Americans mass murder Muslims, It's sexy, like Tom Cruise, fighter pilots, and or drone operators, calm, cool, collected, sitting in their air-conditioned whatevers behind computer consoles with perfect teeth, perfect hair, sipping iced coffee, and launching laser-guided missiles that find their bullseyes on weddings, schools, places of worship, and families seated around dinner tables. Whereas with their Islamic counterparts, it's backwards, barbaric, Quentin Tarantino-esque, as they are forced to use means as sophisticated as Mama's favorite stew pot or barely 21st century cell phones. The other ugly truth is that Americans really should thank their lucky stars it doesn't happen more often, and by often we mean on a daily basis. Over the last half-century, America has directly or indirectly murdered millions of civilians throughout the Middle East and beyond, and yet despite what should be the inevitable volcanic eruption arising from raw, powerful emotions such as grief, rage, and everything in between, there have only been two events, count them two, where someone, or a group of someones, succeeded in carrying out acts of terror against America, meaning 9/11 and Boston 2013. Prospectively speaking, there have been more massacres by Americans by mentally unstable, pistol-packing non-Muslims addicted to psychiatric drugs in the past 12 months than there have been by Muslims perpetrating acts of terror in the past 12 years. Very unimpressive numbers indeed, considering the amount of hysteria, hype, hoopla, hyperbole with which the collective American psychic has been gang raped vis-a-vis buzzwords such as jihad, 72 virgin suicide bombers, and the rest bandied about by interested busybodies. And yet, predictably and sadly, Americans fail to grasp the mathematic significance of all this. A mere two events in 12 years, despite the incalculable amount of war and desolation inflicted by the U.S. against those who would strike back only twice in a little more than a decade. What's wrong with this picture? And while I'm right there, I'm going to stop it and share with you the statement of a drone operator. Now, you may recall West Texas. In West Texas, we had a fertilizer plant, Brona, but they told you on the press. Oh, they told you on the press. Well, that's like it was a plant making the same kind of explosives used on Oklahoma City. No, I don't think so. But I do believe, with the proliferation of drones here in America, that it could have easily been a missile launched from a drone that blew up that fertilizer plant and killed innocent Americans. They probably won't tell you about that. Now let's hear from a drone operator who said he's haunted by his part in more than 1,600 deaths. One, not even a soldier. I used to say, back when I first got married to Janet back in the 70s, I'd go to the local shopping mall, and while she was shopping, I'd go over there and play Missile Command. I said, you know what? I think they're training our children to do this. Here's one of those kids that were playing Missile Command in my shopping mall.
How clear are these images? It's pretty clear, depending on like atmospherics and how what your elevation's at. It can be pretty clear. We're just sitting there, and we're like, okay, these guys are obviously bad guys. You know, the guy in the back hears the sonic boom when it reaches him, and he runs forward. We were actually told to get the two guys in front, worry about the guy in the back later, follow him to wherever he goes. The guy in the back runs forward between the two, and we strike all three of them. And the guy that was running forward, when the smoke clears, there's a crater there, he's missing his right leg, and I watched this guy bleed out. And it's clear enough that I watch him, he's grabbing his leg and he's rolling. Like, I can almost see the agony on this guy's face. And eventually, this guy becomes the same color as the ground that he bled upon. And so he loses his feet. You watched him die. Yeah. It was, you know how people say that drone strikes are like mortar attacks, artillery. Well, artillery doesn't see this. Artillery doesn't see the result of their actions. It's really more intimate for us because we see everything. We see the before action and then after. And so I watched this guy, I watched him bleed out. I watched the result of, I guess, collectively it was our action, but ultimately I'm the responsible one who guided this in.
So when did you start feeling bad about this program? And why? Why did it start to eat away at your...
Because I lost that respect for life.
You become an assassin.
I become heartless. I become, and like,
you felt like you were a hitman.
Not necessarily. I just felt like a sociopath. You know, I wanted to kill these people. You know, these were bad guys. And, I mean, we had their list of...
Hang on a minute. I'm not sure what happened here. Hang on, we'll get it fixed. That's interesting.
Waiting there for a second, guys. Are you back?
Okay, I'm trying to get back here.
Okay.
And let me see if I...
And
Okay. Am I back here? I don't know.
you're back.
Okay, don't know quite what happened there, but...
Well, the audio was sounding really good at first when you first started playing it, and then as it went on, the static whistly kind of thing started to get louder and louder and louder.
Okay,
So
let's
that's
see
kind of what
if
happened.
it's working here. There's only a couple of more seconds here. On this, we got this is a fairly young guy, bald-headed, talking to an interviewer about flying drones. Now, how do you know? Well, he'll explain a little bit more. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Their accomplishments underneath them, but instead of being like, man,
Okay.
Sociopath, actually, if you want to say that. I wanted to kill these people. No, these were bad guys. I mean, we had their list of their accomplishments underneath them, but instead of being like, man, these guys need to die, but I'm really sad that we have to execute extreme measures, I was like, man, I can't wait for these guys to die. When I left the 3rd SOS, they gave me a sheet of paper.
They gave me a sheet of paper with the accomplishments of. First of all, they gave me a sheet of paper telling them what these bad guys had done. Now, how do you distinguish who the bad guys are? 1,600 feet, or whatever the level of these drones are. I don't know. I don't think anybody else knows either. And these soldiers that were talking about this, they saw these families killed in automobiles. They've hit these drones have hit weddings. And here's one of these drone operators said, I killed 1,600 people and I felt good about it. At first. Then he says he felt like a psychopath. And I'm believing that he developed a conscience. And I've said, and I saw that when these troops were testifying before Congress. Well, all right, tell you what, look, no. Thanks, SJ, I appreciate you telling me that. And I'm working on the weren't working, the audio's fine. All right. I did turn the mic around so you could hear this drone operator. And that's off the hook now. Now let's go back. You know, it's just because a slightly to almost believable story involving two individuals tired of seeing their extended families killed in various Islamic locales throughout the world seems to tie up the loose ends and seems to explain the obvious regarding the events in Boston doesn't mean there aren't more twists and turns to it than meets the eye. Part of that is the crisis actors that are being used to do this. A lot of these people are simply actors. They got one whole thing called crisis actors, and you're seeing pictures of people with their legs blown off, but they're not bleeding out. Remember the guy in operating the drone said he watched from a drone. He watched the guy bleed out. Well, that's what happens when you blow somebody's leg off. They bleed out. Indeed, without getting into nonsensical armchair forensics about body parts blown off that really weren't, are crisis actors whose job is to make Boston look like the event that some allege that really wasn't. There are some real-life, honest-to-God questions that should be pondered and discussed regarding very real behind-the-scenes beneficiaries who cashed in big time as a result of the day's events. First, after getting past all the ugly political face paint and rancid perfume with which the event has been dolled up, and setting aside phraseology meant to put Americans on even more of an aggressive war footing than they are already, the first thing that needs to be recognized is that the bombing in Boston, by face value at least, was by definition a crime of passion. It was, as of this moment, neither an act of war by another state nor something planned and executed by an established group listed by the U.S. government or any other government to be a sponsor of terrorism, but being a crime of passion does not preclude the possibility or likelihood of someone or a group of someones having maneuvered individuals under the influence of raw, powerful emotions such as grief, rage, and everything in between into committing such acts if it worked into their own interest. And of course, we don't know for sure that these two young men, supposedly Chechens, even committed the act. The videos showed them still wearing their backpacks, showed their backpacks weren't the same color as the backpacks that supposedly blew up. And of course, there's the presence of the former SEALs, private mercenaries that the U.S. government uses. We can rest assured that there are individuals whose interests were served that day in Boston, individuals who needed the carnage, chaos, and everything in between to take place in the same way a dentist needs tooth decay to stay in business. As intended, Boston, like 9/11, was not one of those sweet nothings whispered into the collective ear of America that is here today and gone tomorrow. It is exactly the kind of whiplash event that results in people wanting action, wanting it now, and wanting it big, meaning someone or a group of someone's has to die, to the point that if an entire nation of otherwise innocent people must be blown to bits in order to get one allegedly guilty individual, so be it. This being the case, that means the first question any rookie investigator asked in a crime of political passion such as this is A, who needed it to happen, and B, who benefited from it. Now, apply that to 9/11 too. Who benefited? I've told you who benefited. Hell, they've told you who benefited. Netanyahu, Bibi and Netanyahu said it was good for Israel. It was good that 3,000 people died in the World Trade Center. And I think the question you really should be asking is, on that morning, where were the 4,000 Jews that worked in the World Trade Center? Why did only one die? Oh, well, they were warned. They were warned. And we got the Mossad guys high-fiving it over in New Jersey who say they were sent there to document the event. Shows pre-knowledge. Now, back to Boston. Before isolating who did benefit for this drama, or trauma if you prefer, let's first shorten the list of prospective suspects by identifying those who didn't benefit from it. Obviously, the two Tasnerov brothers themselves, one dead and the other innocent or not, nevertheless already convicted in the court of public opinion and facing the gallows. Next on the list of non-beneficiaries are the religion of Islam and about 1.5 billion adherents around the world who on a daily basis are being hunted, shot, bombed, poisoned, starved, jailed, tortured, and everything in between by an Israeli-fied America and their cooperative cousins around the globe. As a result of that day's events, Muslims everywhere can now expect to be even more violence against their persons and including, or perhaps especially, those living in places such as Syria, Iran, Pakistan, Lebanon, etc. And finally, on the list of those not benefiting from the events of that day are several billion people the world over who are dying, literally, for a little peace and quiet in their personal and collective lives. Included in this are countries such as America and her western cousins who were beginning to cool off to the idea of perpetual conflict with 1.5 billion Muslims who were ready to throw in the towel on this whole clash of civilizations nonsense. And keep in mind here, we just not only will we and should we point fingers at the Jews, but your local attorneys, your local businessmen who are, dare I say the word, Masons? You know, the ones that put the cornerstones next on the churches there for their worshipful masters. I guess we could probably throw a few doctors and people in the pharmaceutical industry in those bunch of Christianized Masons worshiping Lucifer as the god of this world and having their master, the author of Morals and Dogma, Civil War General Albert Pike, tell you we're going to have 2 world wars, 3rd World War being against Muslims. In fact, it can be accurately said that virtually the entire planet, weary from war, ready to move on to other issues such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, did not benefit from this latest event in any fashion. The entire world, that is, except for one tiny section of highly contested real estate lying along the eastern shore of the Mediterranean, calling itself the Jewish state. An interesting development, surely. 2 individuals of Islamic persuasion and Russian nationality carrying out an act of terror in what is historically the birthplace of America at a time when Israel is screeching like a banshee for war in Syria, Iran, and possibly Russia, simultaneously with the American war machine, beginning to splutter and stall. As far as Israel is concerned, the timing could not have been any better. Like Moses parted the Red Sea so his fellow Israelite banditos could hightail it out of town with all of Egypt's gold and silver before Pharaoh's army caught up with them, this latest event in Boston was a lifesaver for Israel if there ever was one. Why did so much of this problematic theocratic ethnocracy benefit from the events in Boston that we could easily take Bibi Netanyahu's infamous 9/11 was good, as it will generate immediate sympathy for Israel, as well as his. We are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers in the Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq that has swung American public opinion in our favor. And apply them perfectly to Boston without need of any alterations, adjustment, nips, or tucks whatsoever. Indeed, the only thing missing from the entire drama in Boston were the same 5 dancing Israeli Mossad agents, one and all in New York City on the day of 9/11, who were last seen high-fiving each other over the collapse of the Twin Towers, and later admitted on Israeli TV that they were one and all Mossad who had been sent to the U.S. to document the event. So, is a war-weary world out of line then in imagining the clinking of champagne glasses and shouts of Heil Chime in various locales such as Tel Aviv, New York, and Washington, D.C. in the aftermath of what took place in Boston? Is it over the top to picture powerful Jewish interests slapping each other on the back and snickering at their recent bad fortune that befell America as they did on and after 9/11? Not in the least. In fact, all of the rabbits pulled out of the various black hats by media magicians working for organized Jewish interests at Hebraic festivating over the recent terrorism in America is only part of the story that seems believable, despite it being at this moment only theoretical in nature. Of course, the less informed or more disingenuous of those participating in the conversation of this type would react to such statements with either wide-eyed bewilderment or wide-eyed outrage at the notion that dear little Israel, America's only ally in the Middle East, could either A, pull off an act of war such as Boston, or else B, suffer an attack of the giggles about it within the most private of confines. That's because these wide-eyed types don't know or don't care about certain historical events that have preceded Boston, including but not limited to the Lavon affair, Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, Mossad involvement in the bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983, or any of the other high-profile events where Americans lost their lives in order to put them on a war footing.
100%
All right.
sponsored. Okay,
Come back?
we got Clayton.
We got K back. All right.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
went down for a second. All right. We're back here again. Let me do this. Let me take a look here. Let me take a look here, and see. I feel like I was talking to some of my critics in the chat room. I mean, I've been working for the opposing this whole New World Order scheme. I've been attacked by the Jews, by the Mossad, by the ADL, by Southern Poverty Law, and you got these useful idiots in the chat room that are calling me anti-Semitic. I'm simply, I've been doing this for 40 years, folks often are publishing, never been sued for libel or slander because everything I tell you is absolutely accurate. So this description of the less informed or more disingenuous of those participating in a conversation of this type would react to such statements with either wide-eyed bewilderment or wide-eyed outrage at the notion that dear little Israel, America's only ally in the Middle East, could either pull off an act of war such as Boston or else suffer an attack of the giggles about it from within the most private of confines. Don't know which one you are and don't really care. Either way, if you're calling me anti-Semitic, you're calling me a racist, then you are one of those useful idiots. Now, I'm probably being a little kind when I say these wide-eyed types don't know or care about certain historical events that have preceded Boston, included but not limited to the Levant affair, Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, Mossad's involvement in the bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks, or any of the other high-profile events where Americans lost their lives in order to put them on a war footing with Israel's declared enemies and thus securing the continued existence and survival of the Jewish state. What must be remembered when considering the possibility oh, that's good. Okay. Well, I'm not watching the chat room. Not watching the chat room. So maybe we've got, maybe the people in the chat room have woke up. But it has in the past. So, I'll take that. We got a caller? Yeah. I'll take it for a moment. Go ahead, SJ.
Hey, Clay.
Yes, sir.
No, I don't think anybody's particularly accusing you of anti-Semitism. Personally, I myself would like a discrimination between the people living in Israel and the money bags that are basically running the show, fundamentalist Zionists. I could handle any criticism of them.
How about the ones that were saying, well, yeah, we're proud that we killed Jesus Christ. These are settlers there, settlers that have murdered, shot Palestinian children, settlers that were filmed saying, yeah, we're glad we shot, we're glad we killed Jesus and we'd do it again. And I've said over and over, SJ, that you know, I don't know who lives next door to me. She could be Jewish. She could be a little old lady over there that had a couple of sons that went on to become doctors and lawyers. Not her fault. Not her fault. Not if she's Jewish. More power to her. The Constitution gives you the right to worship as you want. But if these Jews, and I say it as this, if these Jews in Israel or in America are supporting a criminal state of Israel, then they're part of the problem. And they could be Christians too. There's a lot of these Zionist Christians out here, like your vice president calls himself a Christian Zionist, that went over and praised Israel for the moral degradation of America, the homosexual movement and all that. He went and praised the Zionist meeting about that. I don't think our vice president is Jewish, but if he's condoning these kind of actions and this kind of immorality and this homosexual and this pornography, and pornography in this country has always been controlled by Jews. I've known them, I've met them, helped put them in prison. So, go ahead.
Well, nobody can accuse you of not using a fairly wide brush when you're tarring. I think basically I wanted to call in and say, look, the chat itself is a lot of different people, and currently today they've been trying to assist. So don't tar us all with the same brush, because we're all different there.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of us that are not against you.
That's encouraging to know.
Right on, bro. I'll let you get going. Keep on trucking.
All right. Thank you, SJ. Appreciate your call.
You betcha.
Now, what must be remembered when considering the possibility or likelihood of Israeli involvement in something such as the Boston bombing is that finding angry, desperate Muslims and maneuvering them into acts of violence that can then be used for maximum political effect is Israel's forte, and has been for a long time. The Jewish state understands all too well the the strategic importance of lights, camera, action in mobilizing not just dozens, but rather dozens of millions of people in performing actions which benefit her and which she deems necessary for her continued survival. And again, for those who react with moral indignation that such unsavory business could possibly be the purview of America's only ally in the Middle East, perhaps it is fitting then to recall the conclusion to which the U.S. Army School of Advanced Military Studies arrived in a 68-page report submitted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff a mere one day before the attacks of September 11th, where Israel and her intelligence service, Mossad, were characterized as wild card, ruthless and cunning, has capability to target U.S. forces and make it look like a Palestinian Arab act. Let's have no illusion about this, i.e. Boston and its immediate aftermath. In places such as United States and Europe, well-scripted political terrorism coupled with plenty of special effects and riveting dialogue is as necessary for the health of the Jewish state as fresh blood is to vampires. Anything, and especially anything dramatic, leading to an increased hatred for Muslims and thus the continued clash of civilization between Judaism's two biggest competitors, only augments Israel's political viability and strength. Likewise, let us have no illusion either about the fact that there are plenty of people, jihadists in their own right, willing to make sure all of this takes place. Backwards, violent individuals who embrace the oldest brand of religious extremism that ever existed, whereas the idea of forcing people by hook or crook to accept the precepts of this particular creed known as Judaism is considered a justified method of evangelism. Lest we forget, from the book of Deuteronomy, you are a holy people unto the Lord thy God, who has chosen, and he has chosen you above all others upon the face of the earth. Therefore, when the Lord your God brings you into the land you are to possess and cast out the many people living there, you shall slaughter them all and utterly destroy them. You shall make no agreements with them, nor show them any mercy. You shall destroy their altars, break down their images, cut down their groves, and burn their graven image with fire. Out of your Bible, out of the Old Testament of the Bible. So, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here, Richard.
I just heard a little bit there. It seems to be not too bad.
As soon as you spoke, it all went away. That magic, it's that magic voice of yours. And yeah, I'll take a couple more calls before my guest comes on. We've got about 15 minutes. And I appreciate SJ's call, and I appreciate the fact I am not getting hammered for trying to bring you the truth. And if I get a little touchy, guys, in the chat room about these criticisms, it's because everything that I've done in person in Tucson, in Austin, in Albuquerque. There's been 2 or 3 Jews show up to try to put me down, to try to drive away any support that I've got, to attack my advertisers, to call me anti-Semitic, to screw up million-dollar deals that I had set up. So I've had all of that destroyed. Now, the reason I'm able to give you this information, there's a reason I'm not on Genesis. Well, first of all, Genesis got started by stealing all of their equipment. And Republic Broadcasting, I happen to know John Stadmiller. I brought him and Mark Koernke to Albuquerque. Mark from Michigan spoke to 500 people in Albuquerque. And so that's kind of how John Stadmiller got his start. So Revolution Radio is the one station I can talk on because they are supported by you. They are supported by their listeners. They're not supported by Jewish-controlled, Jewish-owned advertisers who don't want you to get the truth about what's going on in Hollywood. Now, they'll brag about Hollywood. The Jews will brag. They can brag about that. We own Hollywood. Yes, we do that. Yes, we know that. And this is where your immorality comes from. This is where your pornography comes from. This is where your Quentin Tarantinos come from. And this is the attack on our children. And you got your vice president standing up and saying, yes, well, it's the Jews, the Zionists here, the Zionist organization, speaking to the Zionist organization. Yeah, you've done a lot in creating tolerance for homosexuals. In other words, you can now have little gay kids that have been influenced by their gay parents to go into the Boy Scouts and destroy the morality of your own children. I mean, if you don't find something wrong with that, I don't care what you do. I don't care what drugs you do. I don't care what kind of sex you have. I don't care who you have sex with. I believe in the rights of the individuals. But don't bring it into my schools. Don't bring it into our colleges. Don't try to corrupt our children before they're old enough to make rational decisions. Now, events such as Boston, as well as 9/11, Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, Levant affair, and all those other events where Americans lost their lives in order to put them on a war footing with Israel's declared enemies, be considered the logical outcome of Judaism's intrinsically violent and irrational jihadist precepts as laid out in the book of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, etc. A very loud and authoritative aye, Captain, if there ever was one. And of all the players involved in this, the one who's the most dangerous, the one most likely to engage in such behavior, and with the most motive and means of carrying out something like Boston, was none other than, drumroll, Benjamin Netanyahu. Yes, the same bee who crowed how wonderful it was that 3,000 Americans lost their lives on 9/11 because of the political currency it would inevitably land in Israel's savings account as a result. This same religious nutcase with a doomsday mindset and with the weapons of mass destruction to bring it all about, who's not let a day go by without warning the world of the dire consequences of religious nutcases with a doomsday mindset getting hold of weapons of mass destruction. The same BB who recently stated that the West, including those in Boston, Massachusetts, would be at war with radical Islam the rest of the 21st century. What a Judaical hypnotized world needs to understand about all this is that Netanyahu, despite his skill as a shapeshifter in appearing as an educated, sane human being when the cameras are on, nevertheless, in essence, is nothing more than a wild animal in an expensive suit. As mad as any rabid dog in the latter stages of its affliction, he is the political equivalent of the canine monster featured in the movie Cujo, tearing a car to pieces in order to tear to pieces the woman and the child hiding in it. What makes Netanyahu so dangerous is that he's not just a believer, but a dyed-in-the-wool militant believer in the cause of Judaism, Zionism. When it comes to all the biblical mumbo-jumbo about Jews being God's chosen people, destined to inherit the earth and rule the Gentiles with a rod of iron, his position is a very loud and amen, brother. When discussion comes around to this mad real estate venture known as Greater Israel, with the Jewish state stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates, as outlined many times in the Old Testament, and in which Netanyahu's forebears were commanded by their warlord Yahweh to leave nothing alive that breatheth in the process of redeeming their land. Bibi's position is an affirmatory, so help me God. And all anyone needs to do in testing waters such as these is to consider the various massacres he has personally authorized and then defended through his network of Hasbara operatives embedded throughout the Western media, in his mind formed by the genocidal precepts of both Torah and Talmudic Judaism. The God of Israel demands Gentile human sacrifices, whether it be those of Gaza, Syria, Iran, or even those of Boston, Massachusetts. Gentile blood is Gentile blood, and the vengeful, warlike deity Yahweh is appeased. In short, Nutty Nettie and the Likud government which he heads are the equivalent of the Silver King psychopaths all have come to know over the years from such films as Fatal Attraction, Cape Fear, and Stephen King's Misery, all rolled into one, with a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons that give teeth to this particular brand of messianic madness. So the question is, would a Bibi Netanyahu, much like the character Alex Forrest in Fatal Attraction, feeling ignored, neglected, and pushed aside, engaged in some sort of political terrorism against America in order to set things right again with the Jewish state of the Jewish state's political lovers in Washington, D.C.? Driven by the purest ideals of Judaism, Zionism, would a Nutty Nettie have his own personal team of hired hit in Mossad true believers, as much as he is poses FBI agents in order to maneuver individuals such as the Tarnazov brothers into blowing things up, or to blow up themselves and set the Tamariz brothers up to take the fall, as Israel has done in countless situations? I think we can get an amen, brother. It's such a hypothesis. After all, it would not be the first time Israel has engaged in dirty business such as this, as outlined by investigative journalist Mark Perry in his piece False Flag, appearing in Foreign Affairs magazine. It was revealed how Mossad agents in Pakistan were posing the CIA and trying to recruit members of the terrorist group Jundallah to carry out terror acts against Iran. So Mossad posing as CIA in Pakistan, or Mossad posing as FBI in Boston, or Mossad posing as CIA agents in the hospital. Hi, Clay. How are you doing? You been hallucinating, Clay? You can thank us for that. Yeah? Who are you? We're CIA. Yeah, what are you doing in this country? And what are you doing screwing with me? We don't like you publishing that motorcycle magazine. My ass. In Foreign Affairs magazine, it was revealed how Mossad agents were posing as CIA. So Mossad posing as CIA, Mossad posing as FBI. What's the difference? In fact, given the ease with which Israel and her people slither about the United States, pretending to be art students, movers, or salespersons at kiosks throughout America's shopping malls, and many of them have been born and raised here already, it would actually be an easier gig than trying the same thing in Pakistan. Aside from this, the question that rookie investigators out to solve the mystery of the Boston Massacre need to ask is this: was the threat to do bodily harm to the collective body of the United States not precisely the message that Mad Dog Milivosky, Netanyahu's original family name, conveyed just months prior to the bombings in Boston, where on the floor of the UN General Assembly he held up the famous cartoon of a bomb with a lit fuse, a bomb that looked an awful lot like the pressure cooker bombs said to have caused all the murder and mayhem in Boston? We'll be right back with my guest, Christy.
What the hell will remain a dictatorship? Oh, be quiet. Why are you guys so anti-dictator? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
Be here Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and Near the News with Jason Brentwood. Because when it's time to crush, it's time for Jason. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. Red Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs, government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Now you can share the topics that drive the discussion. Stream live topic-driven talk radio. List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio. Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.
Because when it gets really hot, I will not be
Revolution Radio.
I'll take it. I got it right.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drinking themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Get it?
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
All right. I got an interview here. I'll cut the microphone back on as soon as this all stops.
You realize you're caught in a dream. The adventure begins. Put your seat backs and tray tables in the upright position as we take a trip at the very fabric of reality. Join me, Andrew Bartzis, for Adventures into Reality, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps.
Your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents.
We're not far from the
Imagine
beach.
our computer
We're not far
took
from the
out
beach,
your
just down the road a bit.
Thanks to that. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family record, addresses, phone number? On over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind.
If we could find women, you know, that could walk.
That's my secret.
I can't even swim. You have to realize you have to have water to do that.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, we're back here, and folks, hold on.
Hello, this is Christy.
Hello, Christy. This is Clay Douglas. How are you doing, dear?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
My guest today is Christy McGlothlin. And Christy, I've known your husband for quite a few years. He's provided me a lot of my guests on. It's a pleasure to have you on. How long have you and Jerry been married?
How long have we been married?
Yes, ma'am.
Almost 6 years.
All right. Congratulations. You are making movies, and I'm one of the films that you're making is Dreamer, that portrays a modern day Joseph in his coat of many colors. And at the hour preceding this, I was talking about the film industry and how the film industry has really been promoting perversion, homosexuality, violence, murders. It's not something that is very beneficial for our children to watch. I'd like for you to tell me, first of all, how you started making movies. I've made a few films myself, documentaries, True Face of FEMA, chemtrails, things like that. And how did you give me some of your background first, and then I want to know how you got into the business of making movies.
Okay. Well, as you said, the movie industry seems to be going down as far as morals, morality, and just cleanness, and you know, they seem to be missing just an uplifting and wholesome and family-oriented theme. And so we have quite a few kids. We actually have 9 children. And it's just really difficult these days to find anything that is worth watching, or, you know, where you feel like you're not just going downhill. I mean, I really don't want my boys to go and watch a PG-13 movie with sex scenes in it, or, you know, with a lot of fornication, or, you know, a guy sleeping with a bunch of different girls, which is really common in even some of our really most popular movies that are touted as just being the greatest. And so I think families are trying to step up now and say, hey, you know, we want something that we can watch, that we enjoy, that isn't, you know, just full of garbage, as you said. So, you know, that Jerry and I have a publicity firm, and we have booked guests on talk shows from various other films, you know, promoted different films in the past. And so, you know, we're a little bit connected to that industry. And last year, we just decided it was time just to make a film. And so we worked with a film crew and some people who were very experienced in the industry. So for many years, and we created a film called A Long Way Off, which is a modern-day version of the Prodigal Son story. And so the films that we like to make are not, they are based on the Bible, but they're not preachy, in-your-face, you know, kinds of films. What we wanted to do was to step up the Christian and the independent filmmaking industry a little bit, and use really fantastic actors and cinematographers, and, you know, to create a really quality product that people just love watching. And so last year we did that. We filmed, you know, A Long Way Off, and we had actors Robert Davi, who was in Die Hard and The Goonies and License to Kill. We had Edie McClurg, you probably remember her, kind of a redheaded, sassy kind of lady, very sweet, who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and many, many other shows and movies. We had John Deal, who was in Jurassic Park and Escape from New York and some other films. And then we had Jason Berkey, who was in October Baby. He was the lead, and he was actually our lead. He was our prodigal son.
Now, what about the distribution? The film industry is kind of closed up. I've got some scripts that I wanted to shop around, but I couldn't find any agents, so they only wanted somebody that had been referred to them. I said, well, I've been in business for myself for my whole life. I don't have anybody to actually refer me but me.
Yeah.
So it's really a kind of a closed industry. What kind of challenges have you faced, and how have you overcome those?
Well, you're right. It is somewhat of a closed industry, although now that cameras, like the Red camera, for example, is perfectly acceptable even for large filmmaking corporations to use. So it's actually more affordable than it used to be. But you're right. There are so many people who have fantastic scripts. The issue is the funding. Once you have a finished film, I don't think that finding a distributor is a really big deal. And finding a fantastic distributor who's willing to sink money into the promotion of your film is another thing. But you can find people to distribute it. So our main issue, both with the first film and with the second one that we're working on now, Dreamer, is just fundraising. And I think that any independent filmmaker, which obviously is what you are, has to overcome funding. And we read an article, several articles actually recently, where crowdfunding is becoming popular. And for our current film, Dreamer, which is the modern day retelling of the Joseph story from the Bible, we have a Kickstarter campaign. You could go to dreamer2014.com and click on the Kickstarter button. And so the most recent article was on Zach Braff, who's a really popular actor who wanted to make his second film, his own independent film. And so he used Kickstarter. And what you do is you offer a lot of rewards, anywhere from $1 up to $10,000. And so people who want to support, say, a certain type of filmmaking can go there. Like we have Christian film available, and you could spend $5 or you could spend $50. You could get anything from a T-shirt to a phone call from a cast member, special thanks in the official credits. You could get a day on set. You could get a line in the film. The list goes on and on. So that's one of our methods this particular time, and I think it's becoming more and more popular even amongst the movie houses now are starting to jump into the crowdfunding scene.
You're saying crowdfunding, is that right?
I am, and the reason is because these companies like Kickstarter or Indiegogo make something available to independent filmmakers that is really not available on your own. For example, if I were to set up a website and I were to sell things that didn't exist yet, it would be illegal. And so they've set up a format that's perfectly legal. They have tens of thousands of people every week going to their site. And so crowdfunding basically means that a lot of people come together and they fund a film. But the fun thing is that they actually are able to get involved. And so, they get a lot of reports of, what's going on and who's going to be in the film. And, they may end up on set. They may just be an extra. And so, you get T-shirts and posters and signed props and all kinds of things. And so I think people think that it's a fun experience because it doesn't cost them a lot of money, but they actually get to participate and support something that they believe in.
Now, I have some of your sites listed on mine underneath. People can click on your name and hear this show. It's archived on Blog Talk Radio. It's archived on Revolution Radio. But I've also got Dreamer2014.com. I've got tinyurl.com, Dreamer 2014, and a long way off the movie.com.
Right, thank you.
Tell me about the long way off the movie. Now, you've already got that one done. You're still in the process of doing Dreamer 2014, aren't you?
Yes, A Long Way Off is actually in post-production until the end of July, and then we'll have a premiere, and it should be released theatrically in September. That's the goal. And that one is just, most people know the story of the prodigal son, and so what we've done is modernized it, because, typically when you read a Bible story, a lot of people know your standard Bible stories that are just, commonly told, and you picture them in historic times. You picture, them wearing robes and sandals and long hair and long beards. And sometimes it's hard to actually connect with that story in that ancient time. And so what we've done is taken these stories and made them really relatable. And so for a long way off, we have the father, John Deal, who was just phenomenal. And, there's the son who demands his inheritance, and then the older brother who has always been obedient and always, done whatever his father's asked. And so he's really pretty ticked off at his younger brother. So the father gives the younger brother the inheritance, his name is Jake in our film, and he takes off to the city. And he blows it. He lives a wild life, and he does really well for a long time. And then things start falling apart for him, and he ends up, like in the Bible story, homeless, nowhere to go, sleeping with the pigs. He's starving, and he interacts with a few people who kind of guide him and direct him a little bit, but until he ends up going back home. But the interesting thing is that most of us can relate to any one of those characters. They, with 9 kids, that we have, and many people have adult children, you're kind of waiting for those kids to kind of come back home, come back to the morals and the standards that you raised them with, and to a right relationship with you. And then you've got the prodigal, and most people either have been prodigals or have a prodigal, who's off just doing their own thing, doing whatever they want. And then you have the older brother, and my 19-year-old daughter, she said, I relate to the older brother. And I said, most of us do, really. You look at the person who's going off and wasting your dad's money and living a wild life, and then he comes home and the dad forgives him and he throws him this big party, and you wonder, well, look at me. I didn't go off and do all that stuff. And so you can kind of relate to any one of the characters within that film.
Now, how much are you getting involved in the film? What are you doing? Are you on the set? Are you working with the actors? Are you just primarily concerned with the financing? How involved are you in the filming of these films?
Pretty much very involved with the whole process. The first film, we actually worked with another production company, and I was on set. We worked from the beginning, raising funds and working on the script, working with the screenwriter, and all the way through. And our whole family actually was quite involved. Our teenagers and our adult kids were, working on the set and full time. But we did have just a phenomenally fantastic professional crew. And so I was on set the whole time, which are long, hard hours, but it's definitely worth it, and interacting with the crew and with the cast, and just making sure that what we had written by the screenwriter was actually portrayed on the screen. Now, Jerry and I were executive producers on that film. With Dreamer, Jerry is the executive producer, and I'm actually producing it, which is basically just doing the hands-on work, pulling together the crew, the screenwriter, everybody who's involved, and getting them all organized so that they can function. The crew is, if you've never, well, you probably have been on set, but most of your listeners probably haven't, and we have just been amazed at the order that the crew has. They could come in, most of them not knowing each other, but boy, do they know their job, and they are such perfectionists, and they work so hard. They all know their niche, where they are on set. And so with Dreamer, yes, we're definitely involved. We have a phenomenal screenplay, and we have our basic crew put together, and so we're just trying to, finish raising the funds and film it in September of this year.
All right. Now, what about distribution? How are you handling distribution? Is this going to be available in movie theaters around the country, or are you going to do it? All of my films have been on DVD, so.
Right, yes. We're planning on doing a theatrical release for both films. A Long Way Off should be coming out in mid-September theatrically, And we actually are still in talks with several distributors. And so, once we, have our finished product, we'll go ahead and move forward with that. And then, of course, in addition to the distribution, we'll do a lot of publicity, our own publicity for that. And then Dreamer, the same thing. We're hoping to release that theatrically as well.
That's now I see in Dreamer that if you're also offering posters, T-shirts, MP3 soundtracks, DVDs, and if you're an entrepreneur out there, you can get your product featured in our film. I assume that that's what happens with Coca-Cola and a lot of these other major films. If you see the characters drinking a Lone Star beer, you got a little bit of a sponsor that way. Is that right?
That's right. That is right. If you see a specific product, that product was placed there for a reason, generally because they have some sort of a deal, usually a financial deal with a film company. And we actually funded a fifth of our last film, a little bit over a fifth, through product placements, which was really a lot of fun. Some of our people were actually product placement. They had a product and they actually were in the film as well. Authors, and we had an attorney who played a role, and so we really work with people and get involved with them personally, which is a lot of fun. And product placement is a fantastic way to show your product. If you have anything from a building company to a pen that shines on the ceiling, or who knows, people have all different types of products. Or a company where you make corporate T-shirts or anything like that. They're actually quite easy to fit into a film, and they really do stand out as just a part of the film where it kind of catches your eye, like say an Apple computer or a Coke or whatever you look, or a particular kind of water bottle, and people notice it. And so we actually, in our credits, for a long way off, one of the things that we offer our product placement sponsors is all of their contact information in the credits. So if somebody does happen to notice it, they can, just look in the credits and say, oh, that's how I get in contact with that particular company.
Well, it's going to that could be a full-time job in itself. It sounds really exciting. What kind of is there any drawbacks to this? I mean, this sounds exciting to me. I mean, I've always produced my own films. I've always had my own advertisers for my magazines and that kind of thing. But I always did documentaries rather than a feature film. But I do have a feature film that I've done the screenplay. I did it for HBO. But
wow.
the lawyer that was representing me wanted 10% for being my lawyer, and 15% for being my manager, and 10% for being my agent. And so I didn't. I turned down the contract. That would have meant that he basically owned all of the work that I've done over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But it just sounds like a wonderful project. It's the movie industry has been so dominated by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and all of that. It's the major studios, Universal, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What this is probably a good day and age with the internet and like you said, the cameras. Now you mentioned the cameras. What type of cameras are you using to film this?
Well, we used the Red Epic for the first film, and I'm not sure what we'll be using for the second. Probably one of the Red cameras. our cinematographer this time actually owns a lot of his own equipment. He's out of LA, so when he actually comes.
I just lost her for a second, Richard. Hold on.
Killer Field, for example.
Okay, I got you back. Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, okay. So when you hire your crew, they're experts in their field, and so they go and they, you know, you have a person responsible for renting all of the appropriate equipment and the truck, and you've got other people responsible for scheduling, because that's difficult in and of itself. You know, if you think of scheduling, let's say that you have 5 main actors, and then you have, say, 10 other actors who are coming in just for a couple of days. You actually have to schedule them so that you can get everything filmed while they're here. Because, for example, you know, your larger actors, they don't stay for the entire 24 days. They might be here for 4 days. And
oops. All right, we're trying to bring her back on. Think I'll try it on this one here.
Okay, Christy, we just lost Clayton for a minute.
All right, I think I've got you back.
You're still being broadcasted.
I think I've got you back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back, Clayton.
Yeah.
We were getting a really bad echo from your end of Christy talking.
Sorry about that.
No, that's not your problem, Christy. That was we were getting a echo from Clayton's end. So it sounds all good now. So
yeah, it's we do the show. We do the show on Skype, and there are issues from time to time with Skype. So my apologies.
Okay.
It's you know, I used to joke when we were traveling around the country publishing the Free American magazine. We'd see some bum on the street, you know, panhandling, and it's, oh, look, there's another publisher. And I can almost visualize that in producing a movie. It's you know, it's a gamble. You're really rolling the dice, but if you get a good product out there, it can be tremendously rewarding too, can't it?
It can, and that's what I was saying. When you believe in what you're doing and you just feel called, and that is the direction, you know, that you believe that you need to go in, and for good reason, you know, you're putting out good messages, and hopefully we're putting out good films with good messages that are affecting a lot of people, then you're really willing to put more on the line. I mean, we definitely did. We put a lot on the line, a lot of our time and personal finances and other people's finances, and you know, you delve into it with your whole lifetime, and in the end, you know, to us, it's worth it. If the films positively and make a positive impact in the culture.
Well, I happen to have the Dean of Timothy Bible College in here, sitting in here in the room with me right now, and I'm on the board of directors for Timothy Bible College. One of the things that Dr. Jake Wade and I talk about when he does my shows, usually on Fridays, you know, is that the Bible is really, he refers to it as his answer book, and been around for a couple of thousand years, and for you to be using that as your answer book, as your guidebook, talking about and bringing a positive message out. I think you really got a good combination there. I've also said numerous times that God didn't stop talking to us 2,000 years ago. And I also got my own theory here. I'm not going to ascribe it to Timothy Bible College. This is just Clay Douglas's theory that, burning bushes are a little passé these days in the 21st century. And so God is alive and well on the internet, and it is the internet that's allowing us to do this show and allowing you to promote this. And I'd have to say God's been talking to you, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, I would say so. And, people need good messages, and they need for God to talk to them. I mean, we need to hear the truth from the Bible. And there's so many people who are standing up for the truth, but they're even afraid now to say where that truth came from. Say with homosexuality or any of the major issues even that conservatives stand for today. They'll stand for the issues, but they won't say why they stand for the issues. And whether they want to believe it or not, those morals are coming, and their philosophies are actually coming straight from the Bible. And so we believe that there's so many truths, and we just have a tendency, I think, these days to think, oh, well, that was then, that was history, that's a nice story. And we want to say, no, you know what, this is more than a story. This is something, where God is speaking to you. So in our Dreamer film about Joseph, which is quite a complex story, Joseph, was sold by his brothers into slavery. They hated him. I mean, most people just think of Joseph in the coat of many colors. Oh, his brothers were really jealous. And then it sort of ends there. But that's absolutely the beginning of a very long and amazing story. So to bring that into modern times where you can say, wow, is God talking to me like that? Is he putting something on my heart? Is this a dream that I keep having repeatedly to do something, or just sort of an impression? Is that from God? Because a lot of people just think, oh, well, it's just me. But you're right. If God spoke to Joseph and to many other people in the Bible, then does he still speak to us? And I would say yes, definitely he does. But let's listen. Let's get quiet and listen. So Joseph, he's sold into slavery. He gets rescued by Potiphar. And so we have people who, if you know the story and you're watching the film, you'll say, oh, wow, okay, so there's Potiphar, and there's his wife, who comes on to Joseph and has him thrown into prison for several years. And so Joseph grows, in his character. Instead of becoming bitter, he becomes just more of a man of God until he ends up at the right hand in our film of the President of the United States and ends up, actually making a huge impact and feeding the world. So it's really an amazing motivational story. When you read it in the Bible, it's just a fantastic story. And what we're hoping to do is to say, look, this is still relevant. These are the kinds of things that God is still doing today. So let's, recognize those things.
Well, it's strange how it works, Dr. Wade was on my show on a Friday, I think it was March 15th, and I put out the information that it was my last day. It was my last day. I was disgusted. I didn't feel like I was making any progress, and I billed it as my last show, and before 24 hours had gone by, I had been contacted by a wonderful lady from Corpus Christi, where I happen to be now, and I was contacted by Revolution Radio, got in touch with Revolution Radio, and so Monday morning I had a new 2-hour show. It's
wow.
and I believe that is God at work. So many times I'll get up in the morning to do a show, and I won't have any idea what I'm going to talk about when I go to bed that night. And I'll turn on my computer and open up my email, and there's a relevant story. It's you know, to me, that's really got to work. So I'm really pleased to hear you echoing my beliefs, you know, here.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that we need to know, and maybe we need to dig it out a little bit more, because, you know, there may be people who have had very similar experiences to yours, and they don't attribute it to God. They attribute it to luck or to circumstance or, you know, whatever. But when you know that there is a God who loves you, who's providing things from big to small, because you may have thought that was a big thing, or you may have thought that that was kind of a minor thing. Oh, look, there's a story. Wow. You know, and people might just say, oh, you know, that's the internet. But, you know, God, you're right. He works through all things. And I actually was speaking with a pastor a couple of weeks ago, and he said, well, you know, how do you feel about the internet? And, you know, just various aspects. And I said, you know, it's like money. It could be used for good or evil. Yes, there's a lot of evil on the internet. But there's a lot of good. And so we need to use what is available to us. You know, if God calls us to make disciples of all nations, well, yes, you can pick up, you can go to Africa, and you can go to another country, or you can go sit at a coffee shop and you can talk to people. But, you know, we also have all kinds of modes of communication now. And so, you know, if he's provided that for us, then, you know, let's make good of it. And that was our perspective with the entertainment. You know, people use entertainment to escape from their daily life. You know, if you want to go see a film, it's not because you want to be focusing on what's going on in your life right now. It's because you just kind of want to go and see a good story and escape for a little bit. So the modern, you know, media, modern entertainment industry is really using that for the bad, you know, to tear our families apart and, you know, lead our kids into all kinds of things, drugs and, you know, sex and all kinds of things, instead of just the innocence of being children. But we can turn that around, and we can use that for good. We may be a small portion of the entertainment industry, but everyone should still have access to those types of films.
It's, you know, I've got other visions of God. I don't necessarily think he looks anything like Charlton Heston. And I believe God is the force that holds our atoms together, so therefore he can decide what form he wants to take. He wants wood here, or it could be this body that we're in. And it also occurs to me that if God's omniscient and omnipotent, he knows everything, can do everything, he's the only one of his kind in this section of the universe, he'd have to be bored too. So I think he creates us and gives us a little bit of amnesia, so we don't know that conscience, as we call it, or that extrasensory perception is actually his way of communicating with us. And as Shakespeare put it, the whole world's a stage, we're the actors on it, and God is sitting behind your eyes and behind my eyes, and enjoying the show. We've got free will, so we can decide whether we want to use our talents and our knowledge and our experience for good or for evil. And that's the sense that the way you describe these the movies that you're producing, that's the sense I get. We do make mistakes. You know, I haven't always been a nice guy. I almost regret putting those guys through that plate glass window that time, but actually, not very much. I'm pretty sure they deserved it. But, you know, God does work through us as individuals, and but we've got the choice. We can be the good guys, or we can be the bad guys here. And
right. And you know, you brought up that you.
Yeah, go ahead. You just broke up there for a second here.
Sorry. Well, you know, in Scripture, one of the most amazing things is just how broken people are that God uses. You know, Moses had murdered a man, and then when God did finally call him through the burning bush, Moses says, but I can't talk, I can't speak, I stammer, you know what I mean? God, and David, oh my goodness, look at David who, killed a man and committed adultery, and the Bible says that he was a man after God's own heart. So when you look at your life and you wonder, well, am I just too far gone? Have I sinned too much? Have I led a life that, that God wouldn't want to have anything to do with me? If you look at the examples in the Bible that he shows very clearly.
Just broke up a little bit here. Richard, I've just lost her there for a second.
Things, and God loves them. So
great, got you back. Go ahead. We're all right now. I just lost you there for a second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
So when you see those people in the Bible, when you see the people in the Bible who have done, things that may even seem unthinkable, and God wants them back and accepts them back, then you look at your own life, and that's kind of what we portray in our films, not through preachiness, not through, poor acting, not through making sure that there's a sinner's prayer in every movie, but just telling a Bible story in modern times.
Well, I believe that. I mean, I've done things that were that good or honorable, and I've even been kicked out of heaven a couple of times. They kept telling me, you got more work to do here. I went through the classic death experience and down the tunnel to the light, where I was met by a couple of angels. They said, nope, you got more work to do. So, I don't know, but problem with the call. Hold on a second here. We'll try to get this all back together again. Okay.
Well, I wanted to hear what Clay was getting ready to confess.
Okay.
I'm back and still confessing. I said I've died a couple of times, 2 or 3 actually, I think, and went through the classic death experience. Down the tunnel. The telegrams were sent to my family. We don't think he's going to make it, and yet I was met and basically kicked out of heaven. No, it's not time yet. You ain't ready. You still got more work to do. Get back in that body.
Wow.
And it's true. I do have more work to do. I've got films that I'm going to be making too, and of course, I've got this radio show to tell people about people like you, Christy McGlothlin, and you are doing something that I think is beneficial. It's positive, and it's from everything that I've been able to discern, it's going to be very entertaining and very positive. I think you're doing a great work here. If I could stay on.
Pray for okay, here
I'm still here.
Okay.
But you know, there's also there's another side I think we are to point out. You know, if God's alive and well here, you know, the devil is too. So the internet's a double-edged sword. You know, so's life here, and you know, I've had a few instances where I thought God had done something for me. Turns out it was just the devil screwing with me.
Yeah, that can happen.
But for you to be as far along here, I mean, now tell us again. How, everybody that's listening to the show, you can go to my site, freeamerican.com, and get all of Christy's sites here. Tell us again, since we've broken up a couple of times, I might not have got on one of my recordings here. When are these films going to be available? What's the status of them? And if people go to your site now, I mean, it's still, they can still get involved. They can still help you out. And folks, I'm urging you. You know, we donated over $1 billion to political campaigns, Republicans, between the Republicans and Democrats last year. And what'd you get for that? Not much. Not much. Two wings of the same bird. And this show right now, the movies that Christy McGlothlin and her husband, Gerald McLaughlin, are making are positive. You can get involved. You can help. And I urge you to do that. You're hearing this message on Revolution Radio and Blog Talk Radio. You haven't heard any commercials on this. I've been doing this show for 2 hours. There ain't been any commercials. So, Revolution Radio and Clay Douglas are supported by our listeners. If you appreciate getting this kind of message, if you appreciate and get this kind of programming, make a donation to Revolution Radio. The links are all up on my site, Free American. Donate buttons are on my site. When you donate to me, you've got your choice of 3 books, and 2 of those books need to be made into movies. The others are not fiction, but my fiction's a lot more believable than my truthful, my factual books. Mystery Babylon will give you the history of the Rothschilds and the history of the whole PATRIOT movement that I've been a part of for 20 years. And my books on Trevor Cameron, Terrorist Hunter. Well, they started out as fiction when I wrote them 10 years ago, but I did a nice little future segment in first one, and it's a lot of that is coming true right now. The same thing would be true for the books I started 45 years ago. I had to do 45 years worth of research to get those out. You can get all those, and you can support this radio show by making a donation to me, clay@freeamerican.com, and I'll send you a PDF of one of my books. If you like it, then you can get a hard signed copy. And my guest today is Christy McGlothlin. You can see her websites, her films, learn about that, and be a part of it. Be a part of it. And I'm going to. You've been really an inspiration for me, Christy, because I have 2 books that I started. I got screenplay for one. I'm up on my website, and I've kind of put them on hold for 45 years while I was doing my research. But you're really an inspiration for me. I believe what I've got's worth seeing, and I've got it visualized here. I know how to make it. It's just a matter of finding the right people, and I might be getting with you and Jerry to meet your cameraman. And tell me about your writers. Now you've got the answer book that forms the basis of what you're doing. That'd be the Bible. Now, tell me about who is doing the screenplay adaptation of that.
Well, the screenplay for Dreamer was written by a man named Cleve Nettles, who is a Christian out of Los Angeles, and he is just phenomenal. We sifted through about 100 screenwriters, actually reading, lots of scripts and samples of scripts, and this man I think he just hears from God. He's written such a complex, detailed, realistic, his dialogue is phenomenal. I would recommend him to anybody, although I don't want to, because I don't want him to get taken away from us, but he's really, really phenomenal to work with. And one thing I forgot to mention too is we're working with some churches in the Raleigh area, and we'd like to work with some other churches outside of the Raleigh area. We have a guy who's actually pulled together quite a few worship pastors, and they're writing one of the theme songs for the film Dreamer, and so they're already working on that, and some of the churches are getting involved. And what we're offering is, if churches or any kind of organization is willing to help us spread the word about our Kickstarter campaign so that we can finish raising our funds, then they get a free advance screening of the film. So at their choice of location, if it's a church, they could use it as a family movie night or an outreach, or even a smaller organization. So they can go to dreamer2014.com and just click on the contact, and send us an email and find out more about that as well.
That's wonderful. If you get a chance or ask Jerry to send me over the links on those websites, and I'd like to take part in that also. It's
okay.
It's by the way, Jerry's been supplying my guests for a number of years, at least 10 or 15 that I'm aware of. So, except I keep losing my.
And today seems to be one of those days.
Yeah, one of those days.
Okay, I think we got him back.
See now, God may have put us together, but the devil's at work trying to break it up.
Hey, that is true. That happens.
We get that during this show. And
well, you're spreading a lot of good messages. I know that much.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking the time to do my show. It's really an honor to have you on here, and I know Jerry does really good work, and obviously he's got really good taste too. So, Christy, I really appreciate being able to talk with you, and I'm going to let you get the last word in here. Tell people again about your sites, and reiterate how they can help, and then I'll let you hang up, and I'll put in some last words for Revolution Radio and the freeamerican.com. If you would do that for me.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for anyone who wants to know more about our films or get involved, you can go to dreamer2014.com, click on the Kickstarter button, and it'll take you to a video where you can see Jerry and I talking about our prior film, and you can actually see clips from our prior film. And you can also go to alongwayoffthemovie.com and see quite a few clips from, behind the scenes and a pre-trailer and things like that. But we would love to work with anyone who is willing and interested in supporting a good, wholesome, clean Christian film.
All right. Christy McGlothlin, Thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have a good one, dear.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Let's let me take advantage here of my very dear friend who drove all the way down from Tillman to see me, Dr. Jake Wade. Glad you got to hang out and listen to that.
Oh, good.
I thought she was pretty inspiring, and I'd like to get your feedback on it.
Sounds sent from God.
Yeah.
I like her. She sounds like she's called, as she used that term herself. It was a pleasant trip coming down here. I brought your puppy with me, and if you were not a close friend, you wouldn't get the puppy. I would keep the puppy. What a companion.
She's a beautiful dog. She's a beautiful dog. I just hope when she's bigger she don't step on this one.
Lunch.
You're still short one. Where's the other one? Dog.
The other two are in the bedroom.
Oh, okay. But I think we did kind of nail it. I mean, God is alive and well. He certainly works for us.
I think I am seeing there's a couple of new shows on regular TV that are actually, one of them's called Saved, I think it is. They're making it a comedy, but it's biblical and it's extremely well done, and they can laugh at it if they want to, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And this lady here, that her and her husband are producing great stuff. That's a very good venue they're working from. And I agree with her. Put some of these things in, not so much thee and thou, but Harry down the road went off and blew his money in Las Vegas, sort of thing. I mean, people can understand that. That's a good thing.
Now, all right, we're out of time here, folks. We'll catch you tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day. FreeAmerican.com. Make a donation.
Yeah, right. A lot of them. Bail us out.
I can't find the dog. She went under the house. I know she came out because she ate one of the doggy bones.
She may come to me if I try it.
Okay. I know I think she's under the house. That's where she was, but I couldn't get down low enough to see.
Do you have a name for her?
I don't know.
I have a collar for her somewhere.
Hey, dog.
I want to bring her in and get her the other dogs used to it.
Would you like to have some breakfast, or would you like to
Oh,
go
gosh,
for a
no,
walk? What do you got?
I just baked a blackberry pie. You want a piece?
I've got a meeting. I've got to get back. I've got somebody finally that's going to come and do my roof on my add-on, and he's supposed to be there at 5:15. So I haven't got a lot of time.
Blackberry pie. You sure you don't want a big piece?
I don't eat pie or cake.
Oh my goodness, you should.
I
baked a cake last Saturday night because we was going to come to church Sunday and I was going to bring a cake. And he kept wanting, well, I won't miss one little piece. I said, you leave my cake alone, and then the weather caused us not to go, so he got to eat the whole damn cake. He was so happy.
Damn good.
Hey, it was a German chocolate with the German chocolate frosting on it with the nuts.
Oh yeah.
I don't let the boys out here.
Okay, yeah, let them out.
Do you like the German chocolate flavor?
Yeah, I do, but I like devil's food better.
The reason I asked, my wife went on a splurge. They were doing a sellout to buy coffee, and she's got German chocolate flavored coffee, and I can't stand it.
Oh yeah, I love it.
She's got like 5 things of it.
Yeah, I do like it.
Well, I'm gonna give them to y'all.
Okay.
Because I got the Peruvian coming, and I like the Peruvian coffee.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I used to get mine from Chevalier, and I
Stop that!
I really don't like flavored coffee. I just like the good old mountain grown Peruvian coffee, and it's
that's what this is.
It's dark roast, and
yeah.
it's very low acid. The Folgers is too acidic.
Yeah. I think that one there is Maxwell House. I don't remember, but I always get the dark roast.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. I might have took it. Dark roast makes a difference because it's less acid.
Yeah, it's less acid, and it also has a couple of extra health benefits I read in one of my health books.
They're supposed to be good for the heart as long as you don't overdo it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I've given it to kids that they wanted to give Ritalin to. So they said, oh, well, we got to give them Ritalin because they're out of control. The problem is that the kids are trying to stay awake.
Yeah.
And so you give them a little caffeine.
You give them Ritalin and they go to sleep.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing the opposite of what they need to be doing with them.
Yeah, I've got a grandson.
It'll fry their brains.
I've got a grandson. They've got on all kinds of drugs, and he gets so violent, and he's really big. He weighs 150 pounds, and he's only like 11 years old, and he gets violent. I mean, he took a knife to school and pulled it on other kids and everything else. He just gets that violent, and my daughter just keeps taking him to the doctor and putting him on more and more drugs.
No good.
And it just scares the daylights out of me. I said, he scares me. Well, you trying to stab yourself?
Trying to kill the dog.
Trying to kill the frog.
You missed.
Honey, the knives are there.
Yeah, I need to get out and how do I get to the beach? You gonna take me?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead. Take him down there.
Where's
Straight up Leopard, and you'll hit it. Just follow Leopard right up, and you'll hit right there by the marina.
Okay.
Take the Jeep and take him up there, and I'll stay here with all the dogs.
Okay.
And
well, I'm gonna follow you so I can leave from there.
Oh, okay.
I really can't miss this guy. I can't leave Katie.
Well, why don't you ride with me, and I'll bring her right back here, and it's easier to get out from
Yeah,
here.
because it's only 10 minutes from here to the beach.
All right.
Yeah.
Cause I can't miss this guy. I can't leave him for Kay. She can't throw 10 up on the roof of this guy at all.
Oh, well,
I've got to throw the...
Is her arm out of the cast yet?
Nope. 2 more weeks, something like that.
Here you go, baby.
And she's still in the neck brace.
Oh my gosh, she got that too.
And Henrietta.
All from getting in a swimming pool that didn't have water in it.
You know you're a blessing to me and that fellow, whether he realizes it or not.
Well, sometimes I wonder if he realizes it, but...
We get busy, Carter. We get busy. Sometimes, we ought to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I say, you stay with you this long, we appreciate it.
Well, I kind of got it cornered though. I mean, my truck's in Indiana Clifford, honey. It'll take you right to there by the marina, and then you can turn to the right and go right down there to that beach where you can get out and walk down to the water. You guys want to go out? Come on. Come on. Go on, Scooter. Out. No! Come back here! Bandit! Bandit! Blackie! Scooter. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on. You're bad. And I'm gonna fix you. gotta find the doggy. I don't know where it's at.
Let me tell Kay. Her husband's okay.